invite all of us. Over to Dr. Al.
Vanakkam. On behalf of Journey of Civilization Study Circle, I extend a warm welcome to all of you for today's special session. For those who joined for the first time, a few words about this study circle. Journey of a Civilization Study Circle, by its name implies, after the book Journey of a Civilization was published by Thiru R. Balakrishnan, it has created a worldwide sensation. It was published in English. Then immediately in the United States, we started a study group for students studying Tamil on behalf of American Tamil Academy, and which is joined by Federation of Tamil Sangams of North America. Both organizations together studied this divided this book into several chapters and studied, and the students were given certificate after completing. So for each one student studied 2-3 chapters like that. After this, near the completion, the author himself, who put into decades of hard work, scholarship, intelligence into this book, joined us for the discussion. Followed by that, the book was published in Tamil. Then again, not only students, but adults also joined to study this again for several weeks. It is like that, and we wanted to continue in this direction and formed as a Journey of a Civilization Study Circle. Even though it was formed in the United States, right now there are several of our members actively engaged in joining from different continents, many countries. Actually, followed by that book, Early Indians by Tony Joseph was studied. Again, the model was the same. Different chapters, different weeks, led by one active member of our circle, followed by a discussion. And finally, the author, Tony Joseph, also joined for a question and answer session. Now, coming to Father's Tongue and Mother's Land, the Birth of Language in South Asia book. Again, we studied on the same model. 8 weeks were 8 different individuals, members of our circle, studied that. And it was a very engaging, wonderful discussions. And it's the same model. We decided to invite Dr. Professor Peggy Mohan to join us for an interactive question and answer session. Now, all of us have watched Dr. Peggy Mohan's YouTube, and we know her immense scholarship. And this group is mostly Tamil, even though a few of our friends from other languages join. So mostly this study circle is mainly in English. So I'm so happy that Dr. Peggy Mohan joined us. I also would like to mention the book Journey of a Civilization was published by Roja Muthaya Research Library, RMRL, and its director, Sundar Ganesan, had, from the inception of the study circle, was immensely helpful and integral part of our study circle's efforts. We will continue to this to study various books for several weeks to coming up, and mainly it is research based. And when we are engaged in, we are based in sound research and evidence-based study circle. With these few words, I extend a warm welcome to Professor Peggy Mohan and all those who joined live and watching this in YouTube. Welcome. Vanakkam.
Thank you. So let me invite Dr. Sundar Ganesan, Director of RMRL, to introduce the author to us and also speak a few words about this program.
Thank you, Pama. I'm so happy we have with us Professor Peggy Mohan today. Earlier, we have invited her for her first book in the RMRL Book Hub series. So I'm very happy that she agreed to join and in this Zoom Journey of Civilization Study Circle, and provided her insights for all the questions this group has raised. And Professor Raj Mutharasan will be the moderator for this. But before that, I'd like to say a few words about Dr. Peggy Mohan. She was born in Trinidad, West Indies. She studied linguistics at the University of the West Indies and completed her PhD program in linguistics from the University of Michigan. This was in 1978. She has taught linguistics at Howard University, Washington, D.C., Jawaharlal Nehru University, and the Ashoka University, and mass communications at Jamia Millia in New Delhi. She is the author of 3 novels, Jahanji, The Youngest Suspect and Walk in C Minor, and the non-fiction books Wanderers, Kings, Merchants, and Father Tongue, Motherland, both published by Penguin Random House. And the first book won the Mathrubhumi Book of the Year award. She lives in New Delhi, and she continues to inspire a lot of people in this field. And we're so happy that she's here. Once again, a warm welcome to her. And this program will be moderated by, as I mentioned earlier, by Professor Raj Mutharasan, who is a Frank A. Fletcher Professor of Chemical and Biological Engineering at Drexel University. He has had a distinguished and remarkable career in both teaching and research. So now I invite Professor Raj Mutharasan to take over.
Vanakkam. Peggy, would you like to say a few words before we get going with the questions? Would you like to make a few remarks?
Would who like to me?
Yeah, if you would like to.
Not really. I think get on to the questions, because then I would know which way you want to take it.
Okay, all right. Then let me, what I have done is I've assembled the questions into 2 parts. The first part are very general questions, and I will project them as slide. That way everybody there are about over 40 people here, they'll be able to see it if they cannot hear me well. And then you can answer the questions. I won't read all of it. I'll read at least the gist of the main point of the question. And the second part, there's sort of a digging a little bit deeper. And so there may be, some of them may be a little bit beyond the scope of today's meeting, but feel free to say whatever that you wish to share with us. First of all, I want to say that we were all very excited in reading your book. And many of us, it was a big eye-opener. Although we have heard many of these stories, but you put it in such logical framework, it made a great deal of sense. And so we had 8 weeks of over 2 hours, an hour of presentation and an hour of discussion that tells you, and then a whole series of WhatsApp messages going back and forth. I wish we could compile all of them into some form, but you've really excited a lot of minds. So we are a very inquisitive bunch. You should take it that way. Okay. We have a wide variety of scholars, chemists, engineers, and of course, philosophers, as well as old-timers and young-timers. So we vary quite a bit in age too. So without much ado, let me get on to the questions. I'll share the screen. All of you can see the screen, right?
Yes, I am.
So how the agenda goes, we start now with the moderated question and answer session. The first question comes from Sri Devi, who sang the Tamil Thai Varte. Is claque formation a natural first step in creolization?
Okay, that's calque, C-A-L-Q-U-E. I don't think so. I have an interesting look. I seem to be getting people wanting to be admitted into the room. Okay, let me say that the word is calque, C-A-L-Q-U-E. I don't think that's the first step. It's a very complicated process, and the way I've worked it out along, and a lot of us in the West Indies, Creolists, are revising how we thought of it, is that it's a 2-step process. That what happens is that people enter a new land, and it's usually men. And obviously the women they meet, can somebody take over from me admitting people into this? I don't want to be the
You
host.
don't mind, Professor Peggy. I am taking care of it.
Okay, please do
It will
that.
just show up to you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so what happens initially, in fact, a very good guide for you to see this is to look at Dakhini and how it happened. First, you get men coming, and obviously they marry local women, and they meet a certain number of scholarly, educated local men who have enough contact with them to learn their language quite well. Well enough that you wouldn't see mistakes as such, but there's a local accent and a few tendencies to stay away from structures that are alien, like the verb to have that doesn't exist in Indian languages. That's the Prakrit stage. What happens later is that you have, if these men are powerful enough to set up a new dispensation, a new kingdom, a new government, that you find that there are people who are drawn to that. And in the process of that, they begin to adopt the words of the new ruling dispensation. And it may be a slow process or it may be a fast process. But the point is that they adopt the words onto what is a framework, an operating system of the old language. So you get this kind of mixture where new words have come and old grammar has remained. And the old grammar could even be more than one language, because normally in an area, a number of related languages will have a similar grammar. Like if you think of all the South Indian languages, there is a similarity, though there are little differences here and there. But in a smaller area, you might have languages which share a grammar, but not totally vocabulary. Now, this new group that comes in creates a larger entity, I say a kingdom or whatever. And in the process, what they do is they spread their words, because their words get adopted the way English words are getting adopted in so many Indian languages. And that mixture of new vocabulary unifying a large area and old structure, which is something that is congenial to the local people, is basically what you get as a Creole. So like if you think of Dakhini, you have a lot of Urdu words or Hindi words. You would not really, as a North Indian, not understand it. But the grammar has a lot of a flavor of Telugu and Kannada. And the more you look at it, in fact, it's interesting because it makes one wonder what was the process of the Dravidian languages in the south of India. Did they undergo a similar process of accommodation with local people there? And because well, we'll get on to that obviously there was a journey south from the Indus Valley, which we don't have any historical record of, but we have models. And yes, creolization is a model which talks of a certain kind of accommodation between settlers and then large numbers of people who find them offering something that is probably worthwhile in terms of a government.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, are Indian languages really two separate families, Indo-Aryan and Dravidian, or are they branches of the same tree that have grown together and influenced each other, that the old classification no longer makes any sense?
I think the bottom is the part I would say that the old classification doesn't make much sense, because if you look at all the languages of India and you take out the vocabulary, you will find that they line up beautifully on top of each other. The North Indian languages have certain other strange features, which are very old Indus Valley features. But like if you even put Bengali on top of Tamil, you are getting a lineup that is so neat that obviously there's something much older that is connecting the languages once you take the vocabulary away. I think the British were heavily invested in two things: in the idea that there were Aryans and Dravidians. They liked all this kind of classification. And the second thing they were very interested in that kind of linguistics is focusing on words rather than on structure. See, when you look at grammatical structure, suddenly you find a smaller number of things that make South Indian languages different from North Indian languages. And I'll be the first to say that the North Indian languages are heavily compromised because the Prakrits played a bigger role there. But I don't like saying Indo-Aryan and Dravidian because it's taking the most superficial layer of the language, namely the vocabulary. I mean, you could imagine any Indian language stripping off its vocabulary and replacing it. Would that make a genetic change? I don't think so. That the most significant thing about Indian languages is not in the vocabulary. I like to get away from vocabulary because then suddenly you see much older relationships, in fact, even older than Dravidian, because Dravidian and Magadhan from the east and so have retained things that are incredibly old and which link us to the Andamans, link us to Australia. Like everybody likes to say that der, der, ner, ra, Dravidian sounds. They are also Dravidian sounds now, but they're actually much older than that because they link to the Australian languages, which preserved them. So we actually have a much deeper history than that. And it's possible that all of our languages grew with the same understructure. And we're forgetting about that, and that's the first Indian peoples.
So when you say all our languages, you mean all Indian languages?
All the South Asian languages, with the exception of maybe the Northeast tribes and some of the tribes in Nepal. But there is a feeling that the rest of the subcontinent is pretty well connected, even in the high Karakoram area of Pakistan. One sees strange grammatical features that can only have come from Indus Valley women marrying these people. And these Indus Valley women were what? Well, were probably pre-Southern Dravidian people. So you get these features in the language.
Okay, thank you. Let me go on to the next question. Is from Nagaraj. What do you think would have happened to Indian linguistic diversity if British rule had lasted another 200 years?
Well, we don't have to go that far. In fact, what was very interesting that was happening is by the time the British came, this thing that is Hindi had begun to shape shift, and you were getting Dakhini, which had a very Dravidian grammar. We were getting various kinds of what they like to call Hindi in the East, which are not Hindi at all. They have a very Bengali type of grammar. And we were seeing things shape shifting, languages mutating, coming together, cracks being sealed. And then somewhere around, I think exactly the year 1900, the British declared Urdu and Hindi to be different languages. And that put a complete break on whatever they were doing. Suddenly, India was English, which became the language of government, and a bunch of other small languages, none of which were in a position to move outside their regions. So the British already achieved in the time that they were here what they wanted to achieve, that namely we have a lot of nice languages all over the place, but the Mandarin language in central power is English. And that has had an effect on disenfranchising about 80% of the population. I mean, most of India is not like us, speaking in English. Even we have a big problem in India now, even like the AI sector. They admit it very openly. They are doing all their work in English. They're trying to connect the languages, but they themselves are quite satisfied they work in English. So the British have created a bit of a stalemate. And I like to look at China in terms of how did it do things. um, they've I don't think that they ever had a non-Chinese language at the center. They had Mandarin and with their characters that whichever groups like the Mongols and the Manchus who came in, they accommodated to them. Whereas I think that we were already beginning to see quite a lot of fusions going on and vocabulary sharing by the 12th century. And I don't know where we would have gone. I don't know where we will go next. I don't think the story is over. But what I would like to see is that I basically see three language families in India. There's the southern Dravidian, there's the northwestern one, which is the ones from the Indus Valley periphery, which is Hindi, Marathi, all the Pakistani languages, and then the um, Magadhan family in the east. That I would like to see much more sharing of vocabulary and seeing how we get our languages involved in what really matters, which is to say science and technology. We are completely collaborating with the British in having English as the language of not just power, but of science. And that means that the kind of people who will do science in India are the people who are traditional religious scholarship, business, administration, not our technologists, not our craftspeople. All these people have been submerged into, it's like we're keeping a large number of zoos. I don't know where we're going to go with this because we don't have much time before uh, the possibility of any kind of growth and fusion in India is going to diminish. This is coming out of a book I've just finished writing. It's not coming out of the books you've read.
Wonderful. Let's go on to the thank you. Let's go to the next question. This is from Nagaraj also. Do you think we lose emotional depth when we move from our mother tongue to English in daily life, or will that depth be regained by future generations through English?
Okay, if it's to be regained through English, you're basically seeing us as South Africa or the Philippines. That's not the most hopeful image for me of India. We had, but look, if you look at the countries of Asia which have done well, not one of them is a country that operates in English. I would not like to go into emotional depth, though emotional depth has something to say that the languages that have not been affected by Sanskrit have not been affected by translation, where we still say things in a way that doesn't look like it's a translation of English. Some of those languages, they're precious and we need to retain that. But the problem is that even our existing languages, and Tamil is one of them too, even though it doesn't have so much Prakrit and Sanskrit vocabulary, um, all these languages have, now let me just see if I can retrieve that thought. I was moving off into a very different direction. Yeah, there is a very strong feeling that English has influenced them, especially in things like how do you express scientific thinking? How do you express scientific concepts? How do you go for the precision that science requires? We always had English as a model. I am afraid that that has contaminated the kind of data we have on our own languages. I don't know how we're going to get out of that, but I suspect that we possibly can. I've seen it very much in Hindi, that technical Hindi really reads like a syllable by syllable translation of English, whereas Urdu does not. And Urdu, in fact, has a much more desi, local flavor to it in the way it couches its thoughts. So I'm not worried about the emotional thing. I really do think that what will make or break our languages is whether they can be suddenly uh, equipped and used for science, where the young men, young women who at the moment don't know English will suddenly be like the Chinese on their cell phones doing a million things and creating the largest number of IT people in the world. That's not yet happening. And that, I think, is because of English. They like, there are people who say, oh, they can speak into their phones and we will change it into text, or they can type on a Google system in English and it will turn into whichever Indian language. And that's ridiculous. There are a large number of people in India who don't know English well enough and would rather not have to go through English in order to get into science, AI, IT. And that's what's on my mind right now. I mean, I have some solutions, which basically are to link our languages in some way, so that I can type something to you in Hindi, it will come out on the other side in Tamil, with a little bit of maybe initial mistakes, and later we will improve the model. But that's where we need to go. We have to think, not that we are people who know English, but we are multilingual people. Just as the Chinese had to understand that they were a people who used characters for their writing, we have a specific problem. And English is keeping us away from becoming what IT will allow us to be.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the next one. This is again from Nagaraj. What role do you think cinema and pop culture have played in shaping India's linguistic evolution? Here, Nagaraj is describing, he speaks Tamil, his mother tongue, but he watches Malayalam movies, Kannada movies, although he didn't understand them initially, but over a period of time, he's able to watch them and understand bulk of it. And so what he's saying is, pop culture, cinema actually contributes to learning of a new language. What is your view or interpretation of his experiences?
Well, it certainly does connect us. It makes things available. When we think of how many languages there are in India, we never talk about what is the mechanism whereby people can learn these other languages. Like, I would love to learn Kannada. I go to Bangalore all the time. So where are the mechanisms to help me do this? I would learn it very fast, believe me. But it's not for me to sit down and construct an LLM and absorb the language in rapid time. I think they're constantly talking about us learning more languages or learning Sanskrit, and the tools for doing it have not been very well developed. So people are using what they can. So basically, if you're seeing videos from different parts of India, these are the equivalent of being exposed to LLMs, which make the boundaries a little less rigid. You suddenly find, like, I remember going with some students in Mangalore into a tribal village, Koraga village, and the students were quite concerned that they wouldn't understand anything. I also thought I wouldn't. And they all gasped, and when they started finding that how much they could understand from Kannada. And they were able to, of course, talk to the person and ask him very specific questions. Our languages are closer than we think. It's just that we've done everything in our power to create these big walls around them. One of those walls is that we've opted for different scripts. Like China did the opposite. It's a single script for all the languages, and that characters means that you don't even hear the sound of the word. It's just the concept of the word that's there. But by making all our scripts so different, we've magnified what could have been a not very formidable distance between our languages. And when you think of it, that there are three languages in the subcontinent that have fairly new scripts, and I'll tell you what they are: Hindi, Marathi, and Nepali. Devanagari was not our script. It was imposed sometime around 1912 in Hindi. Because the British government thought it was such a nice thing. It was linked to Sanskrit, and we must be linked to Sanskrit ourselves. But we had other scripts before that. And so the point is that scripts are a very flexible thing. And this is one of the things that one needs to, we can't undo the past, but with IT, we can go through the problem of not having very transparent scripts. to be able to connect us nevertheless. And it's easier than we think because our languages are all closer than we think.
Okay, thank you. This is from Arasu. Nearly all Tamil literature works written 1,000 years ago, approximately 1000 CE, begin with the word ulagu, which means world. What possible reason might have contributed to this feature?
I can't speak about early Tamil literature. I like the pronunciation, ulagu. Yeah, but I can't say why that would be. Once we get into literature, we're getting into a domain away from the rough and ready language itself. So I'll have to pass on this question and not take too much
Okay.
time. I don't know the answer.
Not a problem. Another question from Arasu Chalaya. Some aspects of Tamil grammar have natural landscapes, hill, forest, desert, pasture, seacoast, as the basis called Tinai in Tamil. Have you come across any other language with this such a feature, namely Tamil literature? Sangam poetry are divided based on these 5 landscape, and each has a particular character, if you will, that's defined by Tolkappiyam. That is, there's a specificity given to the poetry. If it is about a poem written about a love poem in forest, then you must use certain similes in that poem, and you should use certain type of poetics in that particular. And so the question is this kind of a specificity for poetry found in other Indian language literature?
I don't know. Once you get into literature, you leave me unable to answer because I'm not really focused on literature. I'm focusing on language itself.
Language, okay.
To take
That's
your
a
time.
fair answer. So that ends the first part of the discussion. Now we get into a little bit more detail.
Okay.
So this is from me. Your work emphasizes how incoming groups can reshape local languages through contact. In Tamil Nadu, some indigenous Adivasis, tribals, for example, isolated communities in the Nilgiris, preserved Dravidian varieties with features sometimes described as conservative or non-standard. From a contact linguistic perspective, is it plausible that aspects of modern standard Tamil developed as a prestige, coining layered over earlier substrates reflected in the speeches of these communities? If so, what kind of examination or diagnostics one could do this hypothesis? So the premise of this is the Adivasis or the remote tribal communities have a language which is earlier than the modern day Tamil, and whether there is a way of connecting these two or examining the connectivity in a much closer way. This is a more language question.
Okay. Now, let me see. First of all, remember the size of the landmass. We keep talking of a language. It's not a language, it's tons of languages. South India is a large place. The Indus Valley was also a large place. We don't say Dravidian language, we say Dravidian languages. What is interesting to me is that much more than in the north or the northeast, the South absorbed the tribes. There is no tribe that speaks a language that you will not call Dravidian. Now, what does that mean? I don't know what to make of it because we don't have written history. Is it possible that the Dravidian languages of the Indus Valley, the Dravidian languages of India were already close in some concepts to the tribal languages, so that there was not much assimilation that needed to happen? I'm just trying to guess at what it is. In the absence of any historical information or even archaeological information, I've tried to construct an idea of how the journey south happened. And I think I mentioned it in my book that I imagine young men, exactly when I can't say, coming down south and meeting local people. And there has to have been a certain amount of feeling that they had something to offer. They were, they had some technology that was special. We don't know how much of it was military, but the point is that what is interesting is that I suspect that the local languages had an influence on the Dravidian languages coming south in exactly the same way that the local languages had an influence on the Urdu coming south and made Dakhini. So, and at the same time, the local languages are not to be found anywhere. Whatever you call a tribal language in South India is totally Dravidian. There's been a crazy degree of assimilation. Why is that? How did this happen? Was there not much necessity for assimilation, or was there powerful centralizing government, but yet it doesn't seem that that was it. That's one of the mysteries, but clearly the absorption is almost complete. So you may think that all these Todas or various groups, like when we went to meet Koragas and we thought, they will be different. They're not. I mean, nobody in South India is different to a degree that makes them off the Dravidian spectrum. And so that's a story in itself. And I don't know the answer. I can only speculate. We don't have any written history.
Okay, we'll go on to the next one. Thank you. I lived in Ooty when I was doing high school, so I was in contact with Toda, and recently I visited a Toda village, and then, of course, in examining their language, speaking with some of the people there, they have a pretty robust ish sound, as in ship. On the other hand, Tamil does not have the sound except in loan words. So, from your perspective, is this something that was native to the Todas, or it is something that was there in Tamil, but it was lost from Tamil at some point in time?
Well, why would we want to connect them? It's such a large area that there has to be a certain amount of diversity. Also, Tamil has been a little, I mean, it's at the very bottom of the peninsula. So it's had its own kind of isolation for a while. And there's nothing strange about a search, some languages having sh and some languages having s. This is in the order of what you'd expect if there's a large landmass. Also, when we talk about Tamil, we're pretending it's one language. It's hugely diverse. And when you use the word koine or kine earlier, that's not even a linguistic issue. It's that when you have the amount of diversity that a language like Tamil has, you are going to find features that are not linguistic, that are economic, political, which are mainly linked to favoring an urban variety. So what is the Tamil that you are going to find in a newspaper? It's probably going to be linked to your biggest city. And so how do you know what the language was even a few hundred years ago? I think we haven't got a good record of a lot of that. But the amount of variation within the language and within other languages of South India is perfectly normal, I think.
So you're essentially saying it could be an independent aerial development, but not something that
it could be something left over from an early tribal feature. That kind of thing can happen. That too.
Okay, thank you. That was a very nice discussion. Let me go on to the next one. Is from Bahisan. What are your views on Chomsky's universal grammar? Could all of our languages have evolved in parallel? Do all languages require a root to begin with?
You know, I'm getting further and further away from this belief. And I think it is because of AI. If we're talking of a universal grammar and that it is somewhere genetic, it has something to do with being human, right? But there's something that's not human that also processes language and does very well and learns in ways that are very similar to how human, in particular, human children learn, and that is AI. And if it's learning by means of LLMs, and we are also learning by means of LLMs. Is it something about the nature of the LLM that triggers spontaneous learning, or is it Chomsky's universal grammar? Remember, Chomsky's grammar has never been found in the brain. It's a model. And it's now under, I think, competition from another model that he would not have expected. But I am constantly finding that, like in the north, in Delhi, we have poor children being admitted into English medium schools, and they take an amazingly long time to learn English. And then when they suddenly learn it, it's like, aha. And they're speaking, they're sounding like every other child. Now, the question is, what happened? Um, and I think that the best model to explain that is that they were taking time to find the right size of LLM, and it had to be a child-sized LLM. They had to have sufficient contact with the other children, which they were not getting because the other children were rich and maybe didn't play with them so much on the playground. And as they were getting a better and better sense of English, they were also growing. So the size of the LLM required was also growing. And it took, therefore, years for them to learn. People learn language without any instruction, but it requires a particular kind of exposure. And I think LLM is the best example, best illustration of that exposure. We see it like with all children. We see it a lot in Indian children, that they start identifying things with a few nouns and a few short words, and then they back off. They don't talk so much for months, maybe a year. And then suddenly you start finding full grammar. So there is a gestational thing about it. So what's the best model for accounting for this? I am less inclined to go with Chomsky's model, because sometimes I find that the things that he thinks are language things are not. A good example is his Shakespeare's portrait. He says that in the deep structure of the sentence is the word Shakespeare is the kind of person you would make a portrait of. He's not a painter and he's not a collector. Now, I don't know that that is a language thing. I think it's a knowledge thing. Because the other day I posted, you will see like here, you will see quite a lot of duct tape, which I've put around my window to keep out the pollen, pollution, and so. And I posted a picture of this on internet and said that this is the best way to deal with pollen and duct tape. I got a response from AI, which said, if you want to protect yourself, you should use a silicone spray, but don't put duct tape on yourself. Now, this model was very logical. I mean, it's one. It is if I had put it on my skin, I would definitely not get pollen on my skin. But it was also saying that's not the best thing to do. Now, it was not that somewhere in the language is the idea that I meant the thing to be on the window. It's a knowledge thing. This is not a human entity, and it doesn't understand that a human probably did not mean that she was putting it on her own skin. So Chomsky would have said that somewhere in the deep structure is that the awareness that duct tape does not go on human skin. I think it's a knowledge thing. And that a perfectly intelligent AI with good English was confused because it did not personally have experience of how to deal with pollen and skin and so on. You see what I mean? There are other ways now of thinking of how language is programmed, and whether it is in the nature of the language itself that it, after a certain point, generates, a sufficient knowledge. I feel that. I've seen that with the the growth of languages that I've worked on, like working on Bhojpuri. I didn't understand. Suddenly I could sit back and write you the explanation of some grammatical feature there because I suddenly had enough of a model in my head. That's not about universal grammar, but it's a different possibility as to how things work in language. And I like it because it suddenly AI sheds light on human beings.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Let's go on to the next question. Again, another question from Mahison. Has the theory of language X been applied in any other region or civilization and found acceptance, say language Y, based on the same analytical framework?
You're thinking what you mean language X in the Indus Valley?
Right. In your chapter 4,
Yeah. Okay.
you make two columns of comparison of Punjabi and language X and the North and Tamil and other languages too.
And I can't take it far enough. And there's certain things I would like to be able to say, features that are now in all Indian languages, including Punjabi and not in Sanskrit. But I can't prove that they are as old as the Indus Valley. I would like to be able to do that. There are other places where such a situation could arise. I can think of Mexico, for example. What did they speak in the Teotihuacan area, which is something like Harappa or Mohenjo-daro? They know that there were people living there. Wonderful buildings have been brought up, but no one even knows the name of the people, what they spoke. And you can walk around there and we don't know how to even start guessing at what they might have spoken. What helped me in the language X thing is the difference between the modern languages and the Sanskrit and Prakrit that was there. And those differences led me to think that there was something older. But if you don't have features in the modern languages that suggest that, hey, something has been held over, and it's extremely old, you won't be able to take this forward. I'm sure that there are other places that people would like to, but then also you have to be working on the framework that vocabulary is not where you look. I mean, there are all kinds of Sanskrit scholars in Harvard and so who are looking at the Indus Valley in terms of vocabulary. And do we have this word that looks Proto-Munda? Does this word look Dravidian? I don't like to look at words. I like to look at the structure because I believe if you dig up a grave after a few thousand years, you are not going to find clothes and flesh, you will find bones. So I like to look at the bones. But so it takes a model, and it takes also the luck of having almost all the languages of Pakistan differing from Sanskrit in the same way, and in a way that connects them to the larger landmass of India and also to South Indian languages.
We do have Nazir here, Nazir Brahui. You've been in touch with him. You referred to him in your book. He's among our group.
Who's this? Oh, is he here?
Unfortunately, his network is bad, so he's not able to join. He sent me a message.
Oh, he's not here.
Yeah, his network
he
is
was
bad.
here initially.
He was here for some time.
Well, see, he speaks a language which has not only Dravidian features, it has a lot of Dravidian, I mean, its basic vocabulary is Dravidian. That is the difference between what he speaks and, say, a Punjabi or a Sindhi in Pakistan. They'll have all the Dravidian features in the operating system, in the grammar, but the words have come through Prakrit. I don't know what to make of it. It has to be decided in some other way as to whether this is a more recent migration post the Prakrit age, or is it that these are in fact one of the people? Remember, this is a huge area because Pakistan is even probably larger than South India, and you don't expect to have one language. It's not the Indus Valley language. I would say that everybody in Pakistan potentially is someone who goes back to the Indus Valley, and not only Pakistan, all the way into Delhi and all the way into Maharashtra. We may have changed our vocabulary, but I couldn't do the work I am doing if we hadn't preserved a lot of old features and a lot of things which we regard as Northern Dravidian.
In
Northern
fact,
Dravidian as opposed to the tribal Dravidians in central India, Indus Valley Dravidian.
okay, thank you. We'll go on to the, so in short, there was no equivalent language Y for another area. You haven't studied that. Is that the
I
way to
haven't
take it?
studied it. And whoever is there to study it has not yet got into the idea of separating the substratum and with this grammar from the words. So if there's still a lot of the old historical linguists are still looking for words, they won't find them.
That's exactly what we found exciting about your work. You're the first person, to our knowledge, who looked at linguistics in an entirely different way from traditional linguists who look at typically words rather than looking at structure and grammar as being the foundation. That's a very unique contribution.
It comes from growing up in the Caribbean and in the whole Creole experience of seeing this sort of thing happening before us almost in real time, in historical time. And similarly, you can't do better than to go to Hyderabad and see what has created Dakhini in also historical time, because it's come up from, say, the 14th century. That's not very long ago. And you can see that they're like, not only does it have a Dravidian gender system in the verbs, Dravidian gender is basically he, she, and it, but you and I don't have a gender marker. It's just default, whatever. You have no verb in the no verb to be in a number of sentences because it's understood or not there. You have a different way of expressing subordinate clauses, relative clauses, and they're all there in Dakhini. And the best part is it's not causing a problem. I mean, you walk around Hyderabad, and as a North Indian, you don't suddenly feel that this amazingly South Indian version of what we think is our language is hard to understand. In fact, in some ways, if you're from the east of India, you will also think, this makes much more sense than Hindi.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, you mentioned Caribbeans, but I was going to say it came out of your head rather. That is more literally accurate, right? Okay.
Yeah, the idea of Creoles, yeah, because that came up when I first went into university, and it was an amazing feeling to, first of all, that all the funny ways of speaking English were not bad English. And then when I moved around the Caribbean, finding that each country I could understand what they were saying, and I wasn't understanding it from French, and I wasn't understanding it from Portuguese. We were speaking with the same substratum, and it's all a West African substratum there. And similarly in India, that I'm listening to Nepali and Nevari. And if I take the words out, I can't tell which is which. So in other words, that Nepali has a tribal underpinning, and it's a particular tribe. And same way, if I take the words out of, if I take the words from out the Telugu and the Urdu words out from Dakhini, I would pretty much be getting the same thing.
Interesting. Okay, we'll go on to the next question, which is from Mani. Do we know over which substrate language Tamil language is built on?
Now I can speculate. It's a two-part process, because if the Dravidian people came from the Indus Valley, we have languages there. That too was a fusion, because and we have a big problem. We cannot find Dravidian sources outside of South India. we don't find the exact people who donated the vocabulary that became Dravidian vocabulary. That's a big problem, because it's like, we know that the long words and all the endings were something Indian that remained in the language when it fused there. But so we can't take it earlier back, like 10,000 years, to say who were the people and what did they speak when they came into the Indus Valley. So we just have to start at that point. But I do believe we have a second hybridization that went on, because usually migrations are done by men, and I'm imagining that a large number of women were left behind of Dravidian origin in the Indus Valley, and a large number of men came south and started new families, started a new culture. And so you got a second hybridization where the languages in most ways did not change, but in one or two interesting ways they changed, which is typical of even our tribal languages as you go south. So yes, the journey south involved meeting perhaps very sophisticated first Indian people. Remember, they had done a major pictographs, they had metal technology, not the same metals. So there was a kind of an accommodation with the people who were already living in the south, who probably had a lower population density. If they weren't farmers, they wouldn't have. So suddenly, people coming in with knowledge of agriculture will bump up the size of the population in no time. So I think that you have two stages, and the substrate in both cases was first Indian. The vocabulary layer that made it recognizably Dravidian and not something else, we don't know where it came from, but I would suspect that that was a separate layer from the one that gave you the long words and the idea of like gender only being he, she, it, but not I and you, is something you find in some of the languages of the Karakorams too. You find you're finding it almost like a default seeping into languages like Bhojpuri. There's something about like the South Indian, not just Tamil, idea of gender that seems to be potentially there in a lot of our languages. The first idea of how we absorb gender is going to be in a South Indian way. So there is a substrate, and I think that substrate is pre-Dravidian, it is first Indian.
Thank you.
And for all of us, we all have it. Not
Thank you.
exactly the same people everywhere.
Since just a remark, there have been people trying to connect the Australian Aborigine language to ancient language of southern India, but the scholars have said there is no connection. There is
Why
no.
have they said that?
Hmm?
Why would they say there's no connection? Because there's no vocabulary connection.
They might have made it totally based on words, because this was a
That's
paper I read
ridiculous.
about maybe 15 years ago. I don't.
But I think I see a pretty strong connection. First of all, you're looking at the wrong Indians. The arc of migration is from the Indus Valley across the north of India through the Andamans. And I don't know the New Guinea story, but definitely the Australians. You get a few things, one of which was lost in South India, in the migration south. It's lost in all the languages as they move south. The idea of ergativity, that verbs agree not only with subjects, they agree with their objects. That is from North India, early pre-Indus Valley time. You have that with the northern tribal languages, you have that with Andaman languages, and you have that with Australia. They also have genders, which is working in the South Indian style, which is with the verbs, not with adjectives. And they have more genders, not necessarily only two, or not even just three. They can have sometimes up to 4 or 8. Andamans, I think, has 7. So genders are just noun classes. So the idea that you have genders, you have a notion of complex agreements with verbs, and you have this terdernal, which is there in Australia as well. That's what I would expect to find. I think that's quite a lot. And I've even tried to look and see whiffs of it in Africa, in the area from where the first humans crossed to India. I would not be looking at words, not at, oh, it's 60,000 years. Are they mad? You will not get, you, Andamans, which is closer to us, we will not get words. But you will get the and ter being different, the and der being different.
So
That is a hugely strong sign of a single migration and a single people.
if I may remark, I'm not being presumptuous, I'm just being a curious person. To discover the substrate language would be a very great contribution, something that you're very well equipped to examine, Andaman language and Australian language, and of course, what's happening in South India. Something for you to consider as a project.
I have thought of it, but the problem is that in South India, the absorption is so complete that you cannot find a non-Dravidian tribe. As possible you can in Sri Lanka. Whereas in the northwest, you have some groups that are not, who speak with words which are not Prakrit, and we have a huge tribal belt in central India, where again, but even they are not uncontaminated. 4,000 years ago, they had a migration from Vietnam and Burma, and leaving words, but the grammar is still consistent. That arc across Indus Valley, northern Munda area, Andamans to Australia. Exactly what I would expect. I think I see almost more than I expected to see. But I think that the Australians and Andamans have preserved a few things a little better. But in the north, we have mutated it a bit, but kept a few of their concepts. Like in the past tense, in languages like Hindi and Marathi, the verb agrees with the object. So there is a notion that at one time it agreed with the object and the subject both. And that is a very old thing, still there in Australia.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts there. Let me go on to the next one. This is again from Mani. Language X and Tamil language are spoken by people having ASI genetics, that's ancient South Indian ancestry. Do we know what language is spoken by the ancient South Indians, ancestral ancient South Indian, which is the foundational language of what was there?
I have one problem with this ASI and AASI is that it dates back to a conflict when Harvard geneticists came to India and presented the idea that the
David Wright.
the Vedic people, the steppe people, came in from somewhere else, and the government was ready to disassociate itself from their research. So a huge amount of compromising was done to save the situation, and they came up with words like ASI and ANI, which creates an exaggerated notion of the difference between the North and the South. I see it as not merely a spectrum. It's in fact, Punjabi is a Dravidian language which has come under intense pressure from Prakrits. And so there are certain things that have been absorbed from the Prakrits, a notion of gender that is there with adjectives and so. But but look at it. Sanskrit does not have gender in its verbs, but North Indian languages still do. And many of us get away from the intense gendering of Hindi in the verbs and have a much more South Indian notion that does not have a gender. You doesn't have a gender. He and she have genders. So we're getting us. I find that by differentiating the North from the South, it doesn't have a basis in proper genetics. I think they just feel very scared that if they were to say what they really meant, which is it's a single continuous terrain with a little bit more mixture of a few things in the north and a little bit more mixture of a different set of AASI in the south, they might not get the next visa to come and do research in India. And that matters to them. So as far as I'm concerned, so as to what was spoken by AASI people in the South, I really wish I knew, but I just can't find any of them. They really have been absorbed.
The only proxy for that might be the Australian Aborigines and the Andamanese.
There are people in Sri Lanka which have been mentioned. I don't know if they still have a pristine form of the language, but I would guess that if you found the AASI language, the only difference between it and modern South Indian Dravidian languages would be the words. Those would have been lost. But that would be the distinction. But the level of logic, operating system, grammar, I think it can't be very different from the languages we have now. It has managed to stay. So words are what were lost. Maybe they weren't lost in Sri Lanka, and that's what one can hope. There's a particular group there. But
do you mean the Vedas?
Yes.
The Aborigines
But I don't
Vedas?
know. I don't know enough about them as to whether their vocabulary is different from Dravidian vocabulary. Or whether they have absorbed a lot of Sinhala vocabulary. That would really, but it would be so interesting if they had a different set of words, which could, but then again, remember we're talking for huge landmass. The AASI people did not speak all languages, they spoke many languages. If in modern IT connected South India you have so many languages, do you think these people wouldn't have had many more?
Many more. True. Different versions. Okay, thank you. Let me go on to the next one, which is Nagaraj. I've read that Tamil has no copula to be, but I feel it might have existed in early Tamil and still exists in written Tamil. I can give some example sentences. He must be in the audience, I'm sure.
No,
He's a very enthusiastic.
I know what he's talking about, yeah.
He's an enthusiastic person in this field. And in languages like Japanese, he's a scholar in that language. There are copula words, but native speakers often omit them, but they preserve them in their written form.
Yes.
Do you think copulas are an easy feature to lose over time?
Depends upon the language. Like Creole did not lose them. You know, we don't have them with adjectives. We treat adjectives like verbs. I think if Nazir was here, he could tell us. I think Brahui is Dravidian in this respect. And more than the copula, you also have a negative copula, which is again a very Dravidian feature, which I'm surprised we did not preserve in the North. Because it should be, we should have things like this in Punjabi if it's an old thing. But I don't, losing a copula, or maybe it was never there overt, and you think about the kind of sentences where you don't have it. Also remember, there is another thing that's very common about all Indian languages. We're not a very verby people. We like a lot of nouns. So a lot of things are expressed by nouns, which in, say, a European language might be expressed by verbs. Like if you want to say in Hindi, pasand hai, it is pasand, which means I like it. Pasand is a noun. It's not a verb. Liking you is not a verb. You say it's pasand. It's nice. It's pleasing. It's whatever. So that is another larger thing that you will find all over India. But about copulas also disappear in negative sentences in North India. You get that. It's not the most yeah, like when I compared Japanese with say Tamil, I did notice that Japanese seem to have one. I'm glad to hear that it also can lose it at times.
in spoken form.
Yeah, I think
But
we've been looking too much to the West where these things are very prevalent. When you look to the East, you suddenly start finding many more permutations of things which seem very normal to us here.
okay, let me go on to, I could continue this. So we come to this favorite topic of ergativity. This
Yes.
was a topic we spent a lot of time on in our group, multiple meetings, because most of us didn't get a good footing
Okay.
in this area. So I have split this up into two slides. So your table, the following table that's on the next slide, I'll show that to you, was submitted by one in the group. I think it is Nagaraj, I think. Some of the tribal languages in hilly region, and Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, appear to have low to moderate ergative drift, more distinctly different from Tamil. For example, as noted in the table, Irula has a case ending, so does Toda language. But in chapter 4, you note that language X did have ergativity, and therefore the curiosity is it possible that the tribal languages in Tamil Nadu have preserved at least partial ergativity in their native languages? Tamil has not. And one of us wanted to know any explanation for why ergativity was not continued in Tamil, and what is your view on this? And then,
Okay.
of course, the second part of the question is in chapter 4, in the table, you note Brahui does not have ergativity, but apparently it has split ergativity, that is partial ergativity.
Who said that? Because I specifically asked and I specifically checked around and that it doesn't appear to.
This is the table.
Mhm.
And so this is really provided by Nagarajan, right, Bama?
Sridharan.
Sridharan.
Sridharan. Okay. So what his research seemed to indicate, ergativity can be cataloged into minimal, low to moderate, high but split, complete, and absolute. The absolute one is present in the Australian Aborigines language, and I
Yeah.
think you mentioned this earlier.
And
On the other hand, in Tamil, it is minimal or almost absent, but you do see low to moderate and moderate in the tribal languages in South India.
That would be
And
interesting. But what we find, like I think I see Santal and Mundari there.
right.
Okay, it is transitional in that it's not marked. But the interesting thing, partial ergative, yeah, I would say that for Munda and Santali. But interestingly, the minute you start heading south, even within that family, it starts to peel off, it starts to vanish. And I often thought that there's something about the south which took it away. It was not, you see it's missing in Dakini. So could it be that the tribal languages that were here did not want it, did not have it? But I do know that there's a correlation between a losing of ergativity and a simple geographic moving south. Like Maharashtra has ergativity in Marathi, except in the districts that are at the bottom next to Kannada. And I wouldn't say it's Kannada per se that's doing it. It's just simply being south. So I don't think it was strange to me that if the bottom of Maharashtra doesn't have ergativity, why should the Tamil Nadu have it? I mean, we don't know anything about the difference in timing of when the different groups arrive, which group arrived first, to what extent did the languages reform into new languages? We don't know any of these things, but I would be interested to see, like Hunza has total, yeah, total ergativity, and it have they mentioned the Australian languages? Australian languages total ergativity, Andaman's total. You have something interesting in, as I said, Munda and Santal. The verb and the object are marked, or the subject and the object are both marked on the verb, but it's not treated as ergative. Then you have things like Pashto up in the north, where it behaves as though there's a marker, but there is no marker. So clearly something very old was there, but let's see. Now, I have to use my brain on the difference between full ergative and absolute ergative. I haven't got a sense of that. Maybe I have to see what they mean by the difference between absolute and full. But yeah, that's what I expect. Split ergativity, I asked quite a lot. I asked Nazir and he said no. Does it have, which seemed very strange to me. It hadn't, he said no gender, no ergativity. And maybe he misunderstood the question. I would expect a Dravidian language to have some gender in the verb. But maybe he didn't understand what I was asking, because in Pakistan, gender is also in adjectives. But transitional stage, a Southern Dravidian, it will be interesting for me to get the data and see what minority languages have it. It would not be shocking. It would not be shocking if they had a little bit, because after all, if it was there in the Indus Valley and these people came from there, and if they were isolated from the rest of the migrants, some things could have been preserved, but I don't have the information. I would have to look at it carefully.
I will send you the slide, and we have prepared a few other things because we debated this quite a bit, because this ergativity is very foreign to Tamil speakers.
It is foreign to not only Tamil speakers, it's foreign to me. I had to learn because
it's a tough concept. It's a very tough concept.
It's only half of the north that has it. The eastern half doesn't have it. It kind of faded out because there was another migration that came 4,000 years ago from Southeast Asia, which got rid of our gender and gave Southeast Asian numeral classifiers into languages like Bengali and my language and so. But now in the modern languages, there's no sign of ergativity at all. It's like a South Indian language that way. So like we're completely happy. Like I am very happy with Dakhini because it took me a long time in the north to understand ergativity, because it's literally from just a few kilometers to the west of where my family was from. So we didn't have it.
So we have done a lot of digging. We plan to have a detailed discussion on this, but nevertheless, we'll continue on. But I'll send you this.
What you need to do is to find the tribal languages that you say have a bit of it. That data will be extremely valuable. The rest of it you can skip. Okay, we know that Andamans, we know Burushaski, we know Australian, we know what's the story in Munda Santal, we know what's the story in Hindi, Punjabi, etc. I want to know about the tribal languages that you say have it a bit. It would not shock me, but I don't have the information.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your insight here. Fortunately, there is, I became familiar with this only recently. Linguistic Society of India has published a series of books on the tribal languages. and I became aware of it only recently. And
Mhm.
similarly, Anthropological Society of India has published the genome of many tribal communities,
Mm.
which was until in 2022. And so these additional new information has brought at least a little bit of information, more information than we ever had before compared to 2 years ago. Let me continue on, but somebody is able to scribble on this. I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I was just seeing that.
Okay,
You have
this is
selected the pen.
this may be mine, right? Okay, this
Yeah.
is one of my favorite questions because I've been digging into Elamite culture and etc. David McAlpin proposed an Alamo-Dravidian relationship, and Professor Southwood, whom fortunately I had a chance to meet and speak with him a long time ago, has discussed a broader Zagronian perspective connecting the Zagros region, Elamite, and Dravidian with possible implications for Indus linguistic area. How do you view the current evidentiary status of this family link? And of course, all of us know that this is a very large area, so the languages would have great deal of variability. What comparative diagnostics carry the most weight for you from your perspective, which I think are the bones? Where do you see the major weaknesses and etc.? Are there targeted case studies that one could take up to try to examine McAlpin? Unfortunately, he's no more. He passed on last year, I think. But Professor Southwood probably still, I'm
not
sure he's
doing-
retired now.
He's over 95 and he
Yeah.
refuses to do any linguistics. He just plays his guitar. There's some issues here. I don't know the data on Elamite. It would be interesting to see because you might be able to find some words, which is the one thing we don't have. There is one thing that I noted is that in that area of southern Iran, at around the same time that the Prakrits and Sanskrit tried to incorporate ergativity, that area in Iran incorporated it also and got a split ergativity in exactly the same way at the same time. And it vanished, of course, later because I don't know, modern Persian has no sign of it. So I would not be surprised if there was a lot of carryover, very soft border, but I don't know how we would get the information because um, I need to know much more about the Elamite itself. I once asked Southworth about it when he was here. Before I wrote The Wanderers, I met him. And I said, so what is your thought about the Indus Valley being Dravidian? And he smiled and said, be careful because we have ideas, but nothing is conclusive, which means he liked the idea of the Alamo-Dravidian relationship, but he couldn't put his head on a block and say for sure that it was there because one would need to see the data to look at the languages. It's very plausible. As I said, the same thing leaking into Old Persian as into Indus Valley modern languages for a few hundred years. But then they are the same areas. Zagros may not be even, it may not be as far as the Zagros Mountains. There, in fact, is a new genetics paper that's come out talking, of all things, of proto-Dravidians. I don't like the term because it suggests older than. I mean, they mean actually newer than. That there
Yeah,
was,
that was published a week ago, a
yeah,
week or 2 weeks ago,
I'm
right?
trying to handle the vocabulary in it. Basically, in India, in this, I don't think migrations were just short and swift and that was it. I mean, if people came from the Zagros Mountains, why would they have stopped coming after the first batch came? If people came across from the Iranian area, why would they stop coming? It's just that they did not come as rulers, maybe. There were quite a lot more people who came in who might have come in more modestly. Like when they talk of the people who came in from the Pontic Caspian, and why is there this amount of the R haplogroup. how do we know that these were all Vedic people? There are a lot of people in that area who would have been related. And it's not that they were non-Vedic Arya or non-Vedic steppe people. You could have had a constant stream of migration from the Zagros region. Also, what is their data source? You have one body that you found, and you're making a conclusion of thousands of years on the basis of this body. I suspect that their migration was much more an ongoing thing here.
That
And
is true.
however,
In the
but the idea, the areas that are with no first Indian substratum, where it's purely the Dravidian people with the Dravidian vocabulary, we can't find them now. It would be helpful if we could. I suspect
okay.
they may have been there, but as I said, we all of this is now speculative because we don't have the hard data.
Yeah, that is true. But of course, McAlpin's theory, which was published in 1981, was on the basis of the fact that the language Elamite was agglutinative and postposition, and its subject object verb is the reason why he started with it. And then he had spelled out maybe a dozen words. Many of them has to do with relationships and ordinary objects, things of that nature. And I think that was his basis, but he didn't have much acceptance among scholars.
See,
It
that
was
is true.
always
Every single language in India, you could say that about. It just means that it was slightly across the border. I would expect if Dravidians came in as a separate migration from Zagros, that you would find a few without the agglutinative structure, without the long words. I'm trying to find the stage in the language when it didn't have that, and we're not able to, which suggests that, for all you know, the people in the Elamite group did not come into India, but they're Indians leaking across a soft border. We don't, that's equally plausible.
true, very true. Let me go on to the next question. Thank you. This is from Nazir, whom you have been in touch with him.
Yeah.
So he says David McAlpin is the first researcher who proposed Alamo-Dravidian hypothesis and named it Proto-Zagrosian language family. Then in 2022, he formally declared the Brahui language as modern colloquial Eastern Elamite. I had regular contact with him. He accepted my view that Brahui is not derived from Elamite, but Elamite itself is a dialect of Proto-Tamil language, and this dialect was the first initial form of Brahui language. Genetically, Brahuis are Zagrosian hunters and farmers who created Mergarg and IVC. That is why renowned Dravidologists call IVC Proto-Dravidian, but it was actually Brahui, which is Proto-Tamil. What is Miss Peggy Mohan's opinion or research on these views?
I don't have the data, but let me give you my speculations. First, let's take these two words out of it. As I told you, this Indus Valley area is huge. Let's not say there's one language, and let's not say Tamil. How old is Tamil? If you saying it's 4,000 years old, we're past 4,000 years. We're talking about an area which must have had quite a lot of related languages which were not identical. So there is not one Indus Valley language, and to call it Proto-Tamil is kind of unfair to all the other South Indian languages, which we don't know when they formed and took their present shape. And we're talking of 4,000 years. If it's after that, then it's an independent thing that happened in South India. So, and why is it Brahui? It's a huge area. There must have been many languages. I also don't want to venture into the idea of whether it is later migration, because I know Nepal has a Dravidian language. It's a tribal one. And you don't want to say that it was indigenous there. That could have been a migration. I don't want to get into making that decision. It's just too much of a it's as what shall I say, wishful thinking as us in the north saying, you know, we are the Aryans. Come on. Why would I want to be that? You know?
Okay. Let me go on to the next question. Thank you. This is my question. Genetic studies report the widespread presence of Y haplogroup R2 in all communities in all regions. R2-linked migration into South Asia is not well established, but it is known that R2 folks came into India long before the Vedic folks. The origin of R2 is in Central Asia, and that is well established. From a historical and linguistic perspective, what kinds of contact signatures would help test whether such populations contributed to linguistic area we see today? You see R2 in every state, in every community, every caste, every religion, and they seem to be more present in Bihar than in the rest, but there might be a gradient of some sort. And of course, Spencer Wells' theory is, you might have been familiar with his work, he located a Sakya tribe in Central Asia. He believes Buddha being called Sakya Muni as being a person of that origin. And so there is some connectivity. He suggested in a conversation I had with him about 5 years ago that those folks might have migrated via Tibet into the Gangetic Valley, and that might be a possibility, and then spread out into India. And that was long, long before the Vedic folks came in via Hindu Kush. So do you view this existing evidence, that is the presence of R2, they probably spoke some language related to Proto-Indo-European language, probably, or some other language aligned to this, what they might have contributed to South Asian languages?
Okay.
That is the broad question.
That's what I just said, that we must have had a constant migrating going on. And I think initially, even when the Vedic people came, they were not as powerful, they didn't have a powerful impact. But we do know that the Vedic people concentrated themselves to the west of the Ganga Jamna confluence, and that there were other Caspian tribes with similar genetics who had no hesitation of crossing and going to the east and going also down into Maharashtra. So when we see people with the R2 tag, it doesn't mean that they were Vedic people. And it just so happens that the Vedic people are linked to a document, the Rig Veda, and they are linked to a migration of conquest across the north and down into Maharashtra, which spread their language through Prakrit. But otherwise, there must have been many others from that area. And that's an area that was known to be sending out lots of men. And they would have spoken something. Apparently, there's a lot of information on, well, in Bengali, the word Vratya, which is one of the groups that was non-Vedic Arya, they're still called Bratto. And then you have the similar word in Marathi, Vataran or something like that. But that's one group. There must have been many. Why would there not have been a continuous stream of people? The difference being that they're not easy to distinguish because they were not important, or they did not create kingdoms. Like the Vratya did have an impact in the East at the time when Buddhism, Jainism, and so were coming up. And they were very anti-Brahmin too. But they did not seem to become kings or to create empires. We have a tendency not to remember the people who came in modestly and either settled or aligned with whatever was already here. We noticed the Mughals because they created an empire. We noticed the British, they created an empire. We noted the people who from the Zagros. But just to think, it's how improbable it is that these were the only ones. And we discovered, yeah, some coming in from East Asia. There must have been migration at all times, and why not more? And in fact, yes, if there, if there's that much of a proliferation in other parts of India of art too, it would suggest that there are other Caspian, Pontic Caspian tribes. We do know that there were, but how much we can't say.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. So this is a question about the root word ka in Tamil. Ka simply means protective or extent of an extensive area. And I've listed a number of about 15 or 20 words, which essentially refers to, which gives a different meaning for forest. Thick bush versus a place where one would not be there, scrubland. And so there's the point here is there's a rich collection of words that refer to a geometry or a space. And I wonder whether there are similar characteristics in other Indian languages of a very large number of words that describe the same thing, but they all have very fine, small differences among them. For example, a thorny bush that surrounds an area would be different from trees and woods compared to a land or a sandy domain and things of that nature. So the question is it possible that some of these words actually came from some substrate language rather than really the modern Tamil? Because many of these words we don't use in modern Tamil, they are in the literary Tamil going back to Sangam literature.
Yeah, but then that's still within the Tamil family.
Right, it is. It is.
But I think we know that the terrain was much more forested in the old days. Even like once you cross the Sangam, the Ganga Jamna one in the north, we know that we're into forest area and different animals, different, well, maintaining the forest was also a very important thing there. But this to me just suggests that you have a very different landscape, which has probably changed a lot in recent times. But I won't be able to comment on the words in terms of, except that they don't look alike. They look like they have very separate concepts, which don't derive from one another, which suggests again that an attempt to describe a much more forested landscape, I would guess. I can't say much more than that.
I'll go on to the next question, which really takes into the very last comment you made, which is the root word. The basic idea is the root muham in Tamil means face, but mu as a root, and you can build a whole series of words. I've just listed some of them that I could immediately think of. And also you can build adjectives, if you will. For example, mun means front, muham means face, and of course, mugadu means top of a mountain or top of a roof of a house. And then Ari Muham, Ari means learn, but literally means know the face, if you will, which is an introduction. Ture Muham, Ture means shore, Muham means face, or port, it means port in Tamil. And Nan Muhan meaning person with 4 faces, Ar Muhan means person with 6 faces. And then, of course, in modern term, Ner Muhat Terve, which means in-person face test, if you will.
Yeah.
So it's like an interview. So and also you can use it as an adjective and get muhangodem meaning give face, give attention. Muhancholi means get angry or literally frown. So you can create nouns, compound nouns, and also expressions using a root which is mu. And so, and this is only a partial list. There is another dozen that I could list. The point of it is, is this polymorphological productivity of a single root, muham, is present in many other languages that you have studied.
But this is a South Asian thing, that the tendency to take a noun root and do so much with it. So we're a very nouny kind of language, and but it's interesting to find that it's taking it into adjectival space and things like that. But it's in the nature of a language that's very agglutinative, and that's true of all of us more than we would expect. That did not go away with the Sanskrit influence in the north, but it is, yeah, more pronounced down in the
It
south.
is, and the interesting is that it can be converted into a verb too, just not noun and adjective. That is what was the interesting
Yeah.
part of it. Anyway, since we are running a little late, I'll go on to the next question, which is in Tamil, we have two distinct first-person plural nouns, nam, which is inclusive, and nangal, which is exclusive. We find this exclusivity not only in Dravidian languages. Kannada seems to have dropped it. Old Kannada has it, but not the modern Kannada. But also in Marathi has it, Gujarati has it, and Jaipuri has it, and in many tribal languages in Gujarat. On the other hand, this exclusivity is absent in Sanskrit and in Hindi. I can't put this into the two bins you define in your book, bones and flesh. Is this a conserved property of the earlier and foundational language as it is used in conversations? So it sort of fills into a conversational linguistics, if you will.
Okay, first split off Sanskrit from Hindi. They're two different things.
Okay.
Okay,
For
because
a person from South, they're both the same.
no,
I
they're
mean,
not at
that is
all.
how ignorant we are.
No, not at all. Hindi is a language which has the kind of structure that, okay, Sanskrit is a paradigmatic language, that there's a particular way of inflecting a verb to get a tense and person changes, and it's all in a single ending. Hindi is not like that. Hindi is like any other Indian language, South Indian or whatever, that you stick something on, and that thing that you stick on is going to be the same if you stuck it on another verb. It's not that this verb, this class doesn't work the same way. So Hindi, what is interesting is that it's not, it's again geographical. Marathi very much has it, but Marathi has a lot more of a southern feel to it. I don't know whether to call that Dravidian, because if northern Indus Valley languages are Dravidian too, how did this not, how is this not there in Hindi and Punjabi? I don't know enough Sindhi to be able to comment on things like that. But it does seem that when you move south beyond a certain point, certain things peel off, like ergativity, and or you too far north, you don't have this. You mentioned Rajasthan as well having this.
Jaipuri, which is a dialect that's spoken around Jaipur by about 1 million people.
This is sort
But
of a
it's also,
Marwari.
yeah, it's also present in other languages too. I'm not sure whether it's present in Maithili, but I remember reading something about some Bihari languages have this feature,
This is not
exclusivity.
familiar to me. I speak a Bihari language. What I would like to see then is, what about the Pahari languages like Garhwali? That has a number of very retroflexed sounds, but I have to try to find out whether they have these things, whether it is something that got lost after some time, or whether it simply is much more present in the south, as and see, Gujarat and Maharashtra again are on the west side. So west side means direct south from the Indus Valley. One of the reasons why Hindi will be slightly off the beaten track is not because it's more north, it's also because it's more east. So it's getting
As
some
we,
of the...
as we are on this, and also in Tamil, classical Tamil, you not only have for second person avan, even, that is, even is here, avan is over there, and there's an uvan, which is in between, far away, nearby, and here, right here.
Yeah.
And this is present in, of course, many of the Dravidian languages.
Mm.
And it's somewhat analogous to this because it's a feature of, because it's really words, it's not bones, it is not
No, but it's a
flesh.
concept. It's maybe the words, but the words are representing a concept. And the concept is that there's a difference in certain kinds of pronouns. And I would count that as something bones. Yeah.
Okay, let me go to the last question because I think we're in a little. So you spoke about Koraga language a little bit, and so there's a volume that Linguistic Society of India has brought up. This is 1970. The main thing, this paper came out about 10 days ago. The main thing they discovered was in Koraga tribe, among the people they tested, 82% of them belong to haplogroup U1, mitochondrial DNA
Oh, that
haplogroup.
data, yeah. I don't know
And
what to make of this. I don't understand it very well. Why are they different? Are they much more pristine in terms of being linked to the people who came south from the Indus Valley? Or are they inbred? What is it? I haven't understood it because I've read the paper a number of times and I'm not able to get a sense of why. And some of their terms they're using, like Proto-Dravidian, don't sound very proto to me because later Dravidian, they're basically trying to say that they link to a different group than the general Indus Valley Dravidian group. I haven't understood it very well. I
well, the,
suspect that either it's not very, this is not from Bhatt, no? What is written here?
yeah, this is
We're
Bhatt's
talking
book, right?
above, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Bhatt's thing is, yeah, it's old, and in fact, in that area, they would love to do new research because they think that it's been such a long time. I think it's 1971 or something he did this study.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's exactly correct.
yeah.
Anyway, I leave that as an open question because I'm not in good agreement with the conclusions they draw
I
because
don't understand it.
it's a huge extrapolation they make. They are claiming the language group was founded in that central area, and the only reason they point out is they have found one skeleton with haplogroup U1. U1 is not found in India usually. You won't find U1 a great deal. You'll find U2 a great amount of
Was
them,
it a
but not
female
U1.
skeleton or a male skeleton?
That I do not know. And
That is
that
very
belonged
important. Yeah.
43. Oh yes, for you, but for an
No, no,
archaeologist that didn't matter.
it's important because if somebody has brought in a wife, like that would really mess up the data. Like it would be terrible if when I die, my body is kept because I would confuse the data because I have a lineage to Europe from my mother's side, which is not typical. And you could, if you based a major conclusion on finding my skeleton, you would be wrong because as a woman, my mother was brought in as a wife and how do you only have one skeleton, right? You're basing all your assumptions on that
Conclusion
one
on that.
skeleton and if it's a woman, it's very likely that she could be brought in as or it could be a man who's just come in as a migrant and blended in. India was always a place which took people, but again, we have to think of the paucity of the data and how much we're trying to base on one skeleton. I have
No,
to be
the
very
U1
careful.
is found there,
Yeah?
but U1 is generally considered a Mid-Eastern mitochondrial DNA haplogroup. So if
Yeah,
you go,
but somebody like that could have come in. Like, as I said, I mean, if I get buried in the Nilgiris and some dug up a few hundred years later, you would be totally wrong if you assume that I was what everybody else was like. I could be an outlier.
sure.
It could be somebody who came, it's just one person. This is something we keep saying when we look at the genetic tests. Where, how many of the skeletons did they have?
Okay, although we'd like to continue with this, that is the last question. We'll open it up for discussion from any questions from the floor.
Excuse me. Nice to see the other. I'm Kaparan Muttarasan's wife.
Mhm.
Nice to see you, other. You have gone through a lot of the details.
Oh.
Even though I don't read it completely, but I hear everything. Thank you.
I'm sorry how many questions I wasn't able to answer, but then maybe someone else can answer those.
Okay.
No,
Any questions from the audience?
I think there's somebody.
Agathian.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's this?
Hi, good day, Professor. This is Agathian from Bangalore.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of questions. Actually, in recent days, I have been reading about Sri Lanka's that indigenous people that called Vedas.
Yes.
But they calling themselves as Vanniyaletto. While I searching in Dravidian etymology dictionary, the word is present in there in DED 5330. It's present in there. I don't know what's connection between them and Dravidian, but most of the scholars said they are. They may have relationship with when they may have a touch with that the first Indians come from out of Africa. And again they came they traveled through that coastal areas, and then that Indonesia thing, and then Australia. And I have read a couple of papers in Chemmoli magazine. That one is Tamilum Australia Palangudi Makkal Moligalum. It's from by P. Ramanathan. And one more is from Stephen Hillier Levitt. He wrote a paper in Dravidian and Austroasiatic. I'm sorry, I didn't read it fully. But in Tamilum and Australia, that P. Ramanathan's paper, he mentioned that first person that thing, that Tanmay, Nan, Yan, Nan. In Australian, it mentions Nya, Nyai, Nyatsa, Nyanya, like that. I don't know much about this, but my question is specifically like, what is the relationship between before that? I'm sorry. In your book, Father Tongue and Motherland, page number 188, you have mentioned the Iranian farmers were the people who interbreed with early Mundas and created a hybrid people. Most probably, they were called as Dravidians. Okay.
Now called Dravidians, yeah.
Yeah, in this sentence I can understand that maybe the first Indians are you have mentioned as the early Munda peoples.
They're AASI.
Okay, AASI, the early Munda peoples. So most of the researchers says that Sri Lankan Vedas are mostly speaking that their languages belongs to Austroasiatic, that maybe Munda language. They said
So
like
no,
maybe Munda.
be very careful now when you talk of Austroasiatic and Munda. Remember at the time when the British came here, they noticed a few Austroasiatic words in Munda, which represent a migration from Southeast Asia, which was all completely, I mean, it's like zero females came, and it's 4,000 years ago. And therefore, some of the words exist, which tells you that they must have had a powerful political presence. But they did not make the language into anything resembling Vietnamese. You have to admit that Munda sounds much more similar to, say, a South Indian language in its structure, though it has words that link to that migration. So be careful when they interchange the word Austroasiatic with Munda, because we don't, I mean, Munda people don't look like they came from the Mekong Delta. I mean, it is just absurd. I just can't get people to get that out of their heads, that the languages that it was one migration, and it didn't even continue and have a lasting effect. So it's possible that what they mean by Austroasiatic and Munda, and I don't like the word Munda for it either, because that's a very specific group. Why? It's the AASI, First Indians.
Okay, yeah. Yes,
So
Professor.
I'm very curious about this, but I think nobody's given the data yet, and I can't imagine that it's my job as an old woman to go in with a tape recorder and meet the Vedas and get their first data. I mean, the others should get it and simply get as much speech as they can, and then waste their time and ask, what does this mean? What does that mean? But collect it and hurry up and do it, because this is not a good time for minority languages. They're going to get extinct. But if there is a language in the South area that could give us a clue, it will be this one.
Okay, Professor. Professor, do you have any idea about that ASI people's language?
That's what I'm
So,
saying. This is
yeah.
probably, if there is any, this is it. But South India is not a great place for survivals, because the Dravidian presence really did absorb everyone.
Okay.
And I don't know why, how it could have done that. I'm really curious what was the political system that created that kind of, I mean, like you have North Indian tribal languages, which we will not call Indo-Aryan. But you will not find a single one of the Dravidian tribes that you will say is different from Dravidian. It's just crazy. How did they do it? I'm trying to imagine the contact process. Was there a government? What was there? We don't know. And these are the things that history doesn't seem to look at.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. That's my
Hi, ma'am. This is Vahis
Thank you.
here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm from Sri Lanka, so I have done a little bit of work on this one.
You
And
have. Okay.
unfortunately, as you as you said, the Vedda language is almost lost. They have been
Yeah.
absorbed into the Sinhalese language. There's only about 0.8% of the population still living in the jungles, living their own culture. But however, the language they speak has been completely converted to Sinhalese. There is no way actually to find out their original language. However, what they have found is that there are certain words, so again, lexical in nature, we can't really draw much conclusions from it, but those don't have an Indo-Aryan or Dravidian origin, which they suspect could be pre-Munda or something like that, the AASI people's language. Like, for example, Oluwa is if I remember right, is for the word head, and Kakula is for leg, which don't have any of these origins in Indo-Aryan or Dravidian. So they're still lost. There are a few words, I could dig them up, which they have mentioned that they haven't found a reasonable origin in the lineage of genealogy that they have matched it to. So beyond that, I also have one more question. This is very particular
Let
about
me ask you one question quickly.
Sure.
Words, yes, if you collect them, they're precious. But what about grammatical structures? Do they do things when they speak Sinhala which are different? Which would suggest
there's a lot of resemblance to Dravidian. I mean, as part of my chapter explaining, I mean, a review of this book, I actually did another extra hour on Sinhalese. Maybe you can take a look at that.
Yeah, I would like to.
Yes. So it's predominantly Dravidian, I would say, in terms of grammar, but ergativity is there, a split ergativity, but the gender is lost. There is no gender in the English as well. And just like Raj Mutrasanaya said, the avan, even uvan part is also found in Sinhalese. So it's another interesting thing to note. So grammatically, I don't find, I mean, I speak both the languages, and I find it very easy to go back and forth between the two languages. And though
which two? Tamil.
Sinhalese and Tamil. Yes.
However,
yes.
I would say that just because you think that the Vedda language sounds Dravidian in its structure doesn't mean it's not First Indian.
No, I don't know much about the Veda language at all. Like, I mean, I've only done reading about the words and stuff, but I have never met them or any single one of them. I've never interacted with them. So it's definitely something that people have looked at, but it's like you said, if we were to do any research, we have to act fast because they are dying and they're getting off. Yes.
Yes.
Good observation. Thanks. Thanks, Varghese. Any other questions for Professor Mohan? Sridevi, your question's answered? Sridharan, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question here.
Go ahead.
Like,
Go ahead.
I was watching Romila Stopper's interview yesterday on the YouTube. She mentions that so historians should focus on the Indian scripts, inscriptions.
Okay.
So what do you think about that?
Which inscriptions?
Like all the original ancient inscriptions
You mean like
and
Ashokan?
scripts. No, like they got the
Huh?
scripts actually. She's talking about the scripts and inscriptions.
Okay, I mean, let people do that. Nice. I find that we have never been a very script-oriented culture, unlike China, which got into this 3,000 years ago. I find that sometimes the scripts are modern enough that they give you a wrong impression of what the trajectory was, whereas sometimes the nature of the language itself tells you much more. I did find not scripts but inscriptions, like, and I mentioned this today, and I met the student who brought this up, looking at Ashokan inscriptions and Magadhan Prakrit. At first I said, oh wow, all these Prakrits are alike, and my student said they're too alike, and I said, that's true. I didn't have an answer then, and it came slowly that to dig into it, that Ashoka saw his audience as outside the Magadhan area, and he tuned his language. He put in ergativity, which is not there in the Magadhan languages. Well, that is, I mean, ergativity did not have numeral classifiers. Well, rich people never do. But the point is that he and the Buddha in the Pali texts tuned the language westwards, whereas in the eastern area, there was a feeling that the rulers were from the west, and the common people were not their audience when they put up these inscriptions. So there's a feeling over India, if you look at all of the Ashokan inscriptions, that the language is so similar. It's just crazily similar. It's almost like dialects of the same language. Whereas the people's languages which they were speaking and are still speaking in the Magadhan area are quite different. And I suspect that at that time, even in Ashokan times, the ordinary people in the Indus Valley area were speaking the actual Indus Valley languages with Dravidian vocabulary, which was slowly replaced. Just like the Veda language is slowly replaced with Sinhala vocabulary.
Thank
It's a
you.
pity, yeah. But still we have so much, but we'd like more. We would like to know more, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Hi, Peggy. This is Sridevi.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm.
You muted yourself.
Hi. I just we read this book and it was very interesting. And I have one question. So, being a general reader, what are the specific topics or areas that needs to be researched in Tamil language? What do you expect for a Tamil audience after reading this book? What are the topics you feel like have to be researched more? Because it's a wide. After reading this, it gave a huge opening for a reader, for a Tamil speaking person like me. So, what are the specific topics you feel that has to be researched in Tamil language?
And
And
number of them. One is clearly to get out of language and look at history. We have too little knowledge of people's history, people's movements. It's very easy to get kings and literature people, but how to find out what actually people were doing. One of the things in Tamil is a lot of the features in the language that are slightly different, like the sound. how old is it? How do we do the forensic work to find out what are the different features of the language and how old they are? And I think people have not been doing it because, like, one of the things that I was suspecting, you have the word tangar for, I believe it's a fairly new word. There are a lot of people who have not been to school who don't know it. So to date some of the changes in the language, it will be very revealing to find that how many of these are happening in tandem with other languages of South India. And you to get a sense that did R come up post Indus Valley in two parts of South India and not in Kannada, not in Telugu. So what is the story? Nobody has written it, and we are assuming that, oh, it must be very old because we do it. Not always. So I would like to know about dating of different new things in the language. Again, history more than language.
Thank you.
One question, but it is not.
Speaking of Ra, the oldest inscription is found in Mangulam, which is not very far from Madurai, where the inscription refers to Nedangerian. Re comes there. So
How
that
old
is
it? How old is
that
it?
is second or third century BC.
500 BC.
Yeah. Okay. That's still
Not very old.
not very old. I would be one, and you don't have anything from 4,000 years, you see. 4,000 years would tell us if it's really old and if it's linked to Indus Valley. And you do, for example, in some of the Dravidian tribal languages like Gondi, you find it's not used, and it's similar to the ra, which we have in our northern tribal languages. And so what's actually going on? So you can see it easily when you compare all the different South Indian languages. What is it replaced by? And it's, at least in Gondi, it's replaced by r, which is not there in South India, not there in Maharashtra, not there in the Indus Valley. It's a Eastern thing. Okay, yeah, you were going to ask. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so maybe this is not a linguistic question directly, but it has dependency. So you talked about the LLM models. Also, as we discussed all these questions, you made the point that almost all Indian languages have the similar or same grammatical structure. So does that mean the LLM models for all Indian languages will remain the same? Because I have met you in the IMSC talk. So there also you were talking about the LLM models on.
Yeah, I think so, and I am surprised that I'm proposing it in the book that I'm writing, that we can break the Indian languages into three families, but even so, that can we in fact create an LLM which is not specific in terms of vocabulary, but that if we're dealing with a Bengali language, we will have expectations of no gender, we will have expectations of numeral classifiers, etc. If it's a Hindi, you will have gender, you'll have ergativity. And if it's South Indian, you will expect a change in the order for certain subordinate clauses and things like that. And but those are still not huge differences, that it would be much better if we created a way of having the languages speak to each other. The minute you introduce English into it, it gets complicated because English does not fit the grid. This is a South Asian grid. I do believe so, that it's to some extent, well, LLM tends to suggest with vocabulary, but could we do it without vocabulary to have things like a potential form of the language? Thinking like Chinese, that when they write something in their characters, you can read it into any of their dialects. And there are some problems, but not many. And there's the same problems we would have in India. And that we as alike as China, except that they don't focus on vocabulary and they don't have a script problem, but we see ourselves as much more different because of that.
I think we are running out of time, so maybe
We'll do one more question and then we'll close up. Due to lateness of the hour, it's
Yeah.
apparently late in India right now, 10:30, I think.
It's 10,
What?
10:19. Yeah, my dinner is waiting for me on top of the stove.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Late dinner. One more question. If there are no more questions, then let us.
I can go ahead. Hi, Dr.
Okay.
Peggy. This is because you have a lot of familiarity with the East Indian languages. I'm trying to understand where Sinhala fits in because there's a bit of a debate on where the actual the people of that island came from, east or west, Gujarat or Magadhan. And one language peculiarity that I found during my research for this book review is that in the numeral section of your book, in particular in Sinhala, there is this notion in for counting numbers, 11, 12, and 15 changes quite dramatically compared to the Dravidian or Tamil counterpart, where we have பத்து and ஒன்று combined 11, 12, 13. So it just goes on incrementing up to 20. And then it also follows after. But in Sinhala, it's a bit weird because it has 10 is Dahaya, and then 11 is Ekolaha. So the 1 comes first, and then Dolaha 2 comes first, and then 13 is Dahatuna. So they put the 10 first and the 3 comes after, and then it goes on to 1, 4 is also 10 and 4. But in 15, it switches back again to Pahalua. Have you seen this kind of a peculiarity in any of the Eastern languages when they do the counting? Because you said in one of the languages, the base is 20.
Yeah. Even in my language, yes.
Bhojpuri.
Bhojpuri, yeah.
Okay, so is that something
The
that you have
tribal
seen
language.
anywhere? No, this is Sinhala in particular. I don't know if it came from the tribal language.
This is also something I don't have enough information on. I'm aware of the question because I've always wondered what's the answer to it. That is it that there are two influences and in a different way? What is the nature of the influence from the Magadhan area? What is the nature of the influence from the West? Was one the rulers and one the common people? You will begin to get differences in how they accommodated both. But I whenever I have to draw a map of Sri Lanka, I just give it a different color because I know that Sinhala is linked to our North Indian languages, but I don't know which one. I can't make out yet. Or is it that it's more than one?
Probably, yes. Yeah, okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. With that, thank you for all the attention. And I think Mani will say the vote of thanks. Mani? You're muted.
Oh, yeah.
Still muted. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, now we come to the conclusion of an exciting interactive session with the author of the book, Father Tongue and Motherland, that we have been reading for several weeks now. Let me first thank the author, Professor Peggy Mohan, for accepting our invitation to join us for this session. If I may, your book provoked us to think about the evolution of languages in general and the evolution of Tamil in particular very differently. Your language archaeology methods make us look for bones in addition to flesh in languages. And I must particularly thank you for your brilliant pronunciation of Tamil. I never heard anybody outside of Tamil Nadu or even
It's
inside
not
Tamil Nadu.
difficult. It's not difficult. In fact,
No, Tamils don't.
Yeah, but I must thank you for that. We thank the members of this group who have been reading this book. reviewing it and listening to the reviews and discussing the ideas with a lot of passion. To start with, let us thank Professors Raj Mutharasan and Arasu Challaya for continuously imbuing the research mindset and scientific thinking as we go through these books on science. We benefited a lot with their insight and guidance throughout the reading, and especially in preparation for today's session. We are grateful to RMRL and Dr. Sundar Ganesan for their help in bringing Professor Peggy Mohan to this forum and for all the coordination. We are immensely thankful to Mr. Subbu and Mr. Ranjit of RMRL for their technical help to live stream these sessions on YouTube. We are thrilled that quite a few of the members participated in reading and reviewing the chapters in this book in the following order: Swaminathan Kannan, Alagiri Swami, Mani Manivanan Dasmi, Subhatra Suresh, Sridevi Suganya, Bama, Vahisan Selvaraja, and Pardimal Purushothaman. Once again, thanks to all of the members for the continued participation and engagement and encouragement.
Thank you. This was very enjoyable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Peggy
To
Mohan.
say the least, you opened our minds, Professor Mohan. You just opened our minds, and I think you're extraordinarily talented. You have looked at an issue, at a problem or a phenomena in a very different way from any other scholars have, and therefore you bring a great deal of fresh breath into this area. We really enjoyed reading your book. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Sundar, can you please add some comments? Sundar Ganesan.
I would like to thank Professor Mohan. It's been really wonderful, and I'm really hoping that you will be coming to Chennai soon, and we'll invite you to the Rojamadhya Research Library, where we have the Indus Research Center. And I want to thank Professor Raj Mutharasan and Professor Arasu Challaya. Professor Arasu Challaya especially for starting this JOC group. He has been instrumental in this. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
It is up to you to end this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll probably continue for a little bit.
Okay. I can leave and have my dinner.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a great dinner.
Yes.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. இல்ல எல்லாம் போயிட்டு கூட வரலாமா திருப்பி?
இல்ல நில்லுங்க.
Okay. சரி.
All right. Thank you. All right then.
ஐயா கொஞ்ச நேரம் வெயிட் பண்ணுங்க சுந்தர் ஐயா.
Okay.
நிறைய பேர் வந்து மேபி தட்ஸ் பெட்டர். நம்ம போயிட்டு திரும்பி வந்துடலாமா? ஏன்னா நிறைய பேர்
ஆமாமா.
இதே லிங்க் மறுபடியும் கிளிக் பண்ணுங்க.
அதேதான்.